Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
All right, I'm going to welcome you, Gwen. I have Gwen and Eric here, but I'm not really going to be in charge of this episode. So this is episode 300, and your host is not Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Your host is Gwen.
Well, thank you. I feel so privileged. I cannot believe we arrived at this space. Can you? Like 300.
No. I know. It's sort of blowing me away, the one that's obviously just being released, actually now tomorrow, but it's being released tomorrow is $299. And then I just recorded 301, and it's just like, yeah. There's such crazy numbers to me. I just can't believe it's happened. Right?
Yes. What did you both think going in? Like, what did you have a plan? Like, oh, we'll do this for the first, what, did you have any thoughts?
I think it's a better question for Eric, to be honest, because, I had this, I don't know. I really do feel like it was a little bit of a divine intervention in that I was just at home, not knowing what to do, feeling really lost, and deciding Eric does podcasts. There's a podcast for everything. I should just listen to a podcast on grief and child loss specifically, not just grief, but child loss. And I looked and looked and looked and couldn't find one. And then Eric came home and he looked and looked and looked and couldn't find one. And then I do feel like it was God saying to me, I think you should start one. Because then I said that out loud, which then I immediately regretted saying out loud because Eric was all over it. So that's why I feel like this is a better question for him than for me, because I didn't really know. I really felt like it was just me kind of following God's prompting a little bit, and honestly, quite reluctantly. So you answered the question. What did you think would happen?
So I didn't see 300. I didn't see 6 years of shows, certainly not once a week. I didn't really know the frequency you do. So in that sense, I guess I didn't have any idea that it'd be that big. I was pretty sure, and I think I told you early on, that you would do more than I did with my show. That I had a medical show, and I think I petered out around 100 something. I can't remember now at this point. Now I've gone and do a different show for basketball, so it's different. But I figured that would be helpful. So it reminded me a lot of, and it's different, but like when we moved to town, you didn't have a job as a pediatrician. Yeah. And you're kind of like, you know what? I got a new baby, Andy, and got a 2-year-old. I'd maybe just be a mom. I don't need to do the physician thing. And I thought, well, that'd be okay. But I think you would. I don't think you'd be as fulfilled as you would with a practice, do medicine. So I think you should just try the locum, try kind of filling in for a little bit, and maybe something will turn up. Because you were ready to just kind of call quits.
I hardly even remember that.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I guess. And that is what I started with at my practice. I started in filling in for someone's maternity leave. Yeah. And it was not a job that was going to go any longer than 12 weeks, like her 12-week maternity leave. That was supposed to really be it. And I was told in no uncertain terms that would be it because they had just hired her. They didn't really think they had enough business to hire 2 pediatricians. And then it turns out they liked me so much they kept me, but it was, you're right now that I think back, it was really kind of a test. It was let's see how I do working part-time and whether this is something I want to do or whether I just want to stay home with the kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I felt like it'd be helpful to you just, mentally or whatever. And then
in my grief, you mean?
No, but then that's along the same line. So working as a pediatrician, I think, not training and then being a doctor. And then also when it came to this, I thought it would be helpful to you to just, to do it. I did not expect it to last this long. I have to admit. I mean, it's definitely become a calling. Like every time you're about ready to sort of like, I'm just kind of tired. It's a lot, it's a gruel. It's grinding, grind to get through. To, you're like, well, I can't do more than like 2 interviews a week because it's just too exhausting, just to get through these. These are so emotional. But then you'd always get some message from someone or something. And then like, it's like, okay, well, I guess it matters to not just me. But it's obviously helped you a ton, but that was not my intention was not therapy, but I felt like the fact that you mentioned it, I kind of knew something about it. It just seemed like it should happen. So
maybe God was whispering in your ear too.
Well,
I definitely feel like that's the case. I 100% feel like this was not my idea. This is somehow God's idea.
Yeah, but it was absolutely a mistake to mention it out loud to me.
Yes,
that was a critical error on your part to mention it. And I'm like, hey, I don't know much stuff, but I know how to do that. So I'll help you set that up. And then you just kind of
and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I found someone to do a website for you. What?
Yeah.
What?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just started becoming more and more real. Like, this is really going to happen, because I don't think I thought it really was going to happen. And then you worked on the web page, and then we sat in the basement up north and recorded the first episode on the couch, which I forgot to press record.
Twice. Yep, twice we had to do it.
Yeah, we had to do it twice because I forgot to press record the first time. We literally got to the end, and I looked down, and nothing had been recorded. And I actually thought, briefly, I was like, oh, okay, I read that sign from God totally wrong. This is God saying, yeah, you were wrong there, sister. We're not doing this. This is a bad idea. And I was ready at that moment to be like, yep, we're not. And Eric said, oh no, we're just going to do it again. Like, we just wasted, in my mind, an hour, and it was super emotional and everything, right? And I felt drained, and he's like, nope, we're just going to take a few minutes, go get something to drink, whatever, run upstairs, and we're just going to do it again. You were such an encouragement with that.
Well, it's not like, honestly, let's be clear. When we're, morning, we're not doing much. An hour is not really a big deal.
Right.
We had plenty of hours when nothing happened. So, and it was better the second time, actually, when we recorded, because we were less jumbled in our thoughts. And I think that's probably, and that's, the thing that's most impressive about sort of what you do as far with the show is just how you are able to direct people and get a story that's coherent. It's because, people are, sometimes they haven't told a story. Gwen knows more, you all the time, you're probably trying to sort of figure out where people are coming from, what's going on. And so it's hard to do that. People are not in a good place oftentimes. That's why they're on the show, right? And so to try and get that, formula that works is, and to actually keep people on, and all sorts of different types of people, that's really hard. Right. So that's a skill that you have, and that's probably comes from your, dealing with small children and moms who get scattered and try and talk about this thing and that thing, and you're like, okay, let's focus on the fact the kid's got an ear infection, all right, or whatever it is, right? So I think those skills sort of come into play.
Oh, that's so funny. It brings me back to, I just saw a patient yesterday, and the mom was literally all over the place. And then she started talking about her other daughter and appointment, a lot of medical stuff with her other daughter. And I finally said, you realize that she doesn't have an appointment today, right? She goes, oh yeah, I know. And I said, okay, well, let's just focus on the one who does have an appointment today. Right. But you're right. You kind of have to, it probably is 20 years of trying to get a story.
You're getting stories.
Right, because that is what I do.
And for me, I do anesthesia, so when they get scattered, I just put them to sleep, and then there's no more conversation at that point.
You'd have much more control over the conversation.
Yes, I control. You have the IVs in place, I'm in control. Yeah.
Well, and I think too that's probably why I don't like to plan it ahead of time. I don't at all. I've been on different podcasts, and some of the podcasts, I will get they'll send me thing is ahead of time and ask me to submit questions that I want them to ask me. I don't like to work that way. And I've had other people coming on. Do you have a list of questions for the person, especially if they have like someone who's arranging it for them? Because a lot of people who are releasing books or something like that, they have a publisher and an agent that they're working with, and they're the ones that arrange it. And so they oftentimes ask me for a list of questions. Like, I don't roll that way. I don't do it that way. I like to be a lot more off the cuff. I feel like that's how you get a genuine story, and it just doesn't feel artificial that way. I just feel super strongly about it. So, but I think that does go with, I mean, when I have a family coming into the office, I mean, maybe the nurses talk to them for 30 seconds and I have a few words written down, but for the most part, I get the story, right?
Right.
Well, you want the story to unfold as you right. Naturally.
And I don't want two different stories. I want it to be accurate. I want it to be once. I want it to.
But you want to be surprised. That's how we
and
need
I
the
want
story.
to be surprised so that I can have a genuine response. And I thinking about one that I did yesterday, I was like totally shocked by something she said. I mean, had I asked all this ahead of time, that wouldn't have been the case, right?
Well, yeah, the authenticity of the story is just key. I mean, people can sense if it's staged or, focused and we're more attached to the outcome than actually the story itself. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. So the other piece, and Eric ended up saying it, but I had written it down before he said it, was him knowing you well enough of what would be helpful or best for you, and just giving that slight suggestion like, hey, maybe you want to try, going to work part-time. Then the piece with this podcast, like he knew you well enough that it would be good for you. And I loved that he had that in mind and knew you well enough.
Well, because truly when this happened, so, I mean, we started talking about it in the winter. So Andy died in August. I feel like it was January, February sometime, probably February, when I had that revelation, whatever it was, looking for the podcast, whatever. And I think, don't you think? I'm pretty sure it was winter. And it may have been closer to spring, but I think wintertime. It
was winter because it all came together in the spring.
Because it came together in spring, right? You found the website person, I think, in about May, and it started to really feel more real in the spring. But I was so lost, and I had decided by that point, I'm not working. I didn't know if I would ever go back to work again at that point. And I do think that you knew that I needed something. I couldn't.
Well, to be clear, I was as right as I was about the podcast. I was 100% wrong about you going back to work.
I know.
So that was,
you say that. But if I hadn't tried, I wouldn't have known that I wasn't ready. Right? You always kind of beat yourself up about that, and we kind of sort of chuckle about it. But really, in some ways, I did need to try and see, and it didn't work, and I wasn't ready. But the other piece is I kind of knew what I needed to work on. Right? Then I started seeing Nancy, my therapist, right after I left, is when I started seeing Nancy, and that's when I said, I think I'm done with being a pediatrician. I don't think I can do this anymore. And she said, I just so specifically remember what she said, because she said, if you want to, we will get you there. If you want to go back, I promise we can get you there.
That's wonderful.
I didn't know what I wanted at that point. But I think I needed to really know how hard that was and have that kind of failure so that I knew what I needed to do before I was ready to come back. So you weren't as wrong as you think, as you always say.
No. And failure, I look at it more of an awakening, an awareness.
Yeah, I know. I said that, and as I said it, I was like, what's funny is I would say that to myself, and if any guest I ever talked to had said that, I would do just as you did. Oh, I wouldn't call it a failure, really.
Right.
But yet, to myself, I felt like it was. But you're right. It wasn't. I mean, that's
Right.
not what I would let anyone else call it. So
Right.
it's not what I should call it either.
So we're reframing it. The other piece I want to address that Eric mentioned about your ability to have those authentic conversations and hear the story and bring it together is you not only do it verbally with them, but you do it in a written form, because when you write your intro to each one, I'm amazed every week, totally amazed at your ability to recap in written form what it's about. And for me as a counselor, I love the resource of the podcast, but what I've grown to love is directing them to the episodes where they could read and connect. And you do such a good job with just the short little words that you have. And I love that, because I had a mom last week that I told, and she said, I read through them all and I knew which one I wanted to listen to first.
That's.
Is this where we tell them it's all AI? No, I'm just kidding.
What did he say?
Just AI.
He said, "Is that when I tell them that it's all AI?" Yeah, no.
No.
Yeah, it is so funny because I put a lot of thought into that, and before. So how I write those, just kind of for other people, a little behind the scenes, is that I listen to the entire thing in the days before release. So I listened to this week's that'll be released tomorrow. I listened to the whole thing yesterday, and then I've almost finished the write-up today. So as I'm listening, I think to myself, what's maybe one take-home point that I want to focus on? What's one thing that really stood out to me that we're going to focus on for this week? And usually I have something that kind of jumps out, and that's what I tend to focus on. And then I have to limit it to try to limit it to 2,200 characters, which is what can go on Instagram. Okay. So if you notice, they're all about the same length. I think it was it last week that I couldn't. It was like 2,500 characters, and I had to just chop a couple pieces off for Instagram because I just couldn't get it quite short enough to be on my Facebook page, my Instagram, and the website, and obviously Apple Podcasts, and then also my website, because I usually have the same write up in all four places, but occasionally it doesn't. But I do appreciate that, because I do put a lot of thought into it, and then Eric is always my final editor. So and you don't
typos are my fault. Yeah,
typos are his fault.
Yeah.
That you don't have to edit nearly as much as you used to. You used to have to do a lot more than you do now. Now it's almost always it's like, that's good, and we don't have to do anything. But it's still kind of a habit that I feel like
it's taken her 300 to get that good. Just to be clear, I mean, it wasn't. This is not an overnight process. I mean, it's taken 6 years, or 5.5 years, right? Right?
No. Yeah.
I mean, 52 episodes times.
It'll be 6 years, come August.
Yeah.
So we're already in June. So it's
crazy.
Wow.
It is kind of crazy.
Maybe now is the time I should tell you that I did some research on how long the average podcast lasts.
Okay.
And, there were a couple studies. The one they both pretty much had the same statistics. I used the one from Riverside. Research said 90% never make it past the third episode.
Yeah, I knew that.
And
really?
another 90% quit after episode 20. Mm-hmm. And it said, if you have 21 episodes or more, you are among the top 1% worldwide.
Wow.
That is really something.
Yeah, no, that's why they're like a million podcasts, because a lot of people started them and they're like, you know what, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work.
There's some expense, there's time, there's all the stuff that goes into it. It's not easy. I mean,
right. And I've had
scheduling
many people reach out. I want to start a podcast and think about starting a podcast. And to be honest, I don't know how long any of those have lasted. I should look. Some of them I know what they are, so I could take a look. And I've given definitely some advice.
Yeah.
Well,
then let's talk about what you've learned. I always like to start with the negative. We'll end with the positive. So, what are some of the hard things you've learned? Some of the difficulties in doing 300 episodes?
I would say the time commitment was a lot, and it was what I needed at the beginning. Okay. So at the beginning, especially because I would say within a few months of starting the podcast, you know, I was able to go back to work. I was able to compartmentalize my grief a little bit. I mean, I hate to say that because you're not really ever totally putting it away, but I was able to I worked on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so Tuesdays and Fridays, I worked on this podcast. Tuesdays and Fridays, much of the day, like a big chunk of the day, I spent doing podcast work, whether it was editing, doing interviews, whatever it was. And then I felt like as I was doing that, that was how I was processing my grief. So it was something I felt like I was doing with Andy, and he was a part of it, and I needed to do that. There came a time when spending all day Tuesday and all day Friday doing this, it was too much. It just felt really overwhelming. I am a perfectionist. I mean, that's probably not surprising. A lot of us, I think, who end up going into medicine and becoming doctors are a little perfectionistic. I mean, I remember growing up, I was a perfectionist. My mom was always wanted me to get a B in school because she was like, she just gets one B, then maybe she won't be so obsessed with always having A's, right?
That would have been a problem. You'd have been even more bothered.
I know.
Yeah, but that's okay.
So I was like, when we moved to a new town, I was in regular math and they wanted to move me to advanced math. Then I would do like algebra in 9th grade or something. And my parents made me sign a letter that I would not be upset with myself if I got a B in challenge math. Now, did I get a B in challenge math? Of course I didn't. But the point is I was too perfectionistic, which is not always awesome when you're doing a podcast because I want it to sound perfect. And so my editing, when I edit an episode, it probably takes me about 5 hours in general to edit an episode. And very occasionally I will still have to edit an episode because, as you said, and as we talked about earlier, sometimes parents are hard. It's hard for them to be able to even complete sentences very well. And they get just kind of choppy and it's difficult. So I never, ever, ever want a parent to feel not proud of the episode that came out. Okay. So when there is something that is more difficult and challenging, I will spend the 5+ hours to make that sound good. Because with technology, you can make that sound good. You can take out 10 uhs that are in the same sentence. I mean, you can take every single one out and suddenly that's a fluid sentence that sounds completely natural and it doesn't make them feel like, oh my word, I can't believe that's what I did. So, but I was doing that every week and taking out every and and all of this. I mean, everyone. And it's not great for your own well-being to do that. And it was getting to the point where in my grief, I didn't maybe need that as much. And I'm starting to work a little more and do a little more. And I was feeling just too overwhelmed. So that's when Eric stepped in, right? Because you found me the editor.
Yes. I found an editor.
Had you thought about quitting at any point like then? Like, I just can't do this? Or you jumped in with the solution?
Well, I don't know. Not in her brain. She had never mentioned out loud that she was ready to quit. But it was definitely getting to be a huge task, as burdensome. And before that, it didn't seem to bother her. Like, I thought to myself, my goodness, she's spending so many hours editing, but she's not complaining. Like, okay, whatever.
I honestly, because I felt like it was just Andy and me, I felt like it was just part of the grief journey. It was just something for me to do. It was really healing. That part was healing to me, but there came to a time that it was no longer really healing for me.
Yeah.
And it was great that Eric just probably picked up on that even quicker than me, I would say.
Yes, I was waiting for you to get burnt out of editing.
Right, because he, of course, does this podcast. He'd done the medical one for a long time. Then he was doing a basketball one and a medical one. Then he's let the medical one go and just does the basketball one. But it's a lot. Like, there are some weeks during the basketball season where you can do 4 episodes in a week. I mean, it's a lot. And you could never, ever spend as much time editing a show as I did. I mean, it would be insane.
We don't cry nearly as much on our show.
No. Right. It's not as emotional, so there's not as much to edit. But still, it's similar to the ones that I do with you are never edited. So, I mean, I might edit a couple things here and there, but for the most part, I don't have to edit with you because our conversation ends up being pretty natural and not as emotional, and so it's just easier, right? So I did send those to the editor, but she would be like, I love the episodes you do with Gwen because I don't really have to do anything. And then I was realizing probably shouldn't pay her to do nothing. Maybe I'll just put it out just as is. So that's what we do with that. And oftentimes we do with those as a live stream. This one we chose not to, but oftentimes we do them as a live stream. And then I can't really send it to an editor because there's just not enough time. And I also can't spend 5 hours editing it, which is great because if we did it far enough ahead, I probably would. Just knowing me.
Yeah.
Oh, so anyway, he found this great editor. And how did you find her?
I asked someone, someone interviewed me for a show, and I asked them who they used, and then I just kind of knew them through Facebook or something, and I asked them if they had any ideas for editors, because I was trying to find one. I was contacting some companies, and they're really expensive, or and he came up and he mentioned he knew this Stephanie, and she's fantastic. She's been so good.
She is fantastic.
Yeah.
What's funny is she had her own podcast at the time. It was called This is Colorado. And she had just kind of stopped doing it, I think. And she wanted kind of a way to make some extra money. She cleans houses, I know. And so, but considering, since she did her own, and it would be interesting to know how many episodes This is Colorado has. I don't know.
Somewhere between 3 and 21.
So, but she knew the process of editing a podcast, and she wasn't as picky as me. So I know it does not take her 5 hours. And occasionally I would feel like, I feel like it should have been better. But for the most part, I think she does an awesome job. She does a fantastic job. She's just not quite as crazy as I am.
Yes.
Which is good.
And she's been doing it for years.
And she's been doing it for years.
Yeah. No.
She sent me a message not too long ago telling me what number it was that we had done together, and I can't remember what it was. I wish I did.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, she does a great job, and for her, I'm sure, like most people involved, I'm sure like you, it's like it's you're part of the show, you're part of the sort of the process or whatever
she really does feel privileged to be a part of it. I know had a friend then who lost a child or something, and she felt like she could really know kind of some things to do with that because she's been listening to the show every single week for years now. As doing this her work. So if that's, but that was a big thing. I think the time commitment. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, there's also the financial kind of piece, right?
Yep, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're our treasurer.
Yes, I'm treasurer. Yes, I am.
He's the treasurer.
Wow. We should do an episode. How many hats does Eric wear? There's a lot of them.
I think that's mainly. I feel like that's my only real role. But
honestly, his role is the treasurer, and he has to read my write-up once a week.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of it now. And although it's so funny because I listen every week, right? And I listen to Eric do the intro or the in-roll, and Eric do the out-roll. And I was just thinking yesterday as I was listening to it, like, people probably think he does a lot because he's in every episode.
Well, now wait a minute here.
But you really don't, and you don't even really listen to them anymore. I mean, what's the last one you listened to?
I listened occasionally, but not.
I mean, it's had to have been more than a year since you listened.
No, I've listened since.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I listen to more of your basketball ones than you do to mine, and you always accused of being an opposite.
That's funny. I also think, though, that he is such a force behind the scenes in how much he knows you and supports you. I have a lot of people that have dreams, and one of their fears in their dream is not being supported in that, right? Or not having the kind of encouragement that you have. You definitely are a team, and that shows. I mean, you have, I think that's part of the success, that you are in this together and he sees the value.
Right. And you do support me 100%.
Right.
So I mean, as much as I tease you about not being in the nitty gritty of the every week kind of stuff, I mean, I couldn't do it without you.
Yeah. She keeps me humble. That's really key.
Right. Because, well, the other thing, though, is that when you just said about the cost being an issue, if he wasn't supportive, he'd say, yeah, you're right. Like, this is really a problem. And instead he went, kind of, yeah. I mean, that was supportive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do want to bring that up a little bit because if people listened last week, and this episode obviously is going to be aired tomorrow, but last week, to those who are listening right now, I had a guest on, Michael's Madre, and Eric's laughing because she's a woman from Maine, and with her blonde hair, blue-eyed kid that always called her Madre from the time he was in middle school. So it's funny because she says as she listened to the show, she started listening shortly after Michael died, and she hadn't listened to very many episodes, and she told herself, if I am ever on that show, I'm going to be Michael's Madre, not Michael's mom. And so she wrote to me and she said, I'm going to be Michael's Madre. And I was like, okay. And then I was expecting this Hispanic woman to come on and she has her very strong Maine accent, and her name's Mary Beth. Like, that is not what I expected from Michael's Madre, but right. Okay. But anyway, before she before she was even recorded the episode, she sent me an email and she said, how much does it cost to produce one episode? And I thought, I don't know that I figured it out per episode.
Because she's not the treasurer.
Because I'm not the treasurer. I don't pay the bills. I don't pay the videographer who now does amazing videos, which I want to talk about in a minute. I'm not I don't do the editing. We obviously have just the podcast production costs that we had to pay. And so I figured it out, and it's $125. And she wrote back and she said, okay, I want to sponsor my episode. I'm going to donate $125. And that was so touching to me that she wanted to do that. And so then I mentioned it, even before that episode, I mentioned it a few weeks ago that somebody had just reached out and asked how much it costs to sponsor an episode. And so or to produce an episode, not to sponsor an episode, to produce an episode. And I said $125. So I want to mention right now, just out loud, to the people who have since given $125. So there's, of course, Mary Beth in honor of Michael, Kevin in honor of Jackson, Ronald in honor of Aaron, and Brittany in honor of Percy. And so all four of those now have donated $125 in their kid's name, and I just think that's beautiful. And then I had another donation. Cindy donated in for her daughter for $55. So I don't think you have to do a whole $125, but it got Eric thinking, of course, being my treasurer, that maybe I should start, kind of keeping track of this and saying at the beginning in an introduction, this episode was brought to you by, Kevin in honor of his son Jackson, who's having a birthday or whatever. So whether it's the person who's actually we're talking to that week or someone else just wanting to honor their child or their nephew or whoever. I mean, I thought that was kind of a beautiful idea.
I love that idea. I love it so much. And I love the fact that you're giving people an opportunity to do that in memory of their person, and that you're going to announce it. I mean, it just makes them feel good that it's going for something that they believe in.
Yeah. And I have so many people that write to me and aren't ready to tell their story. They don't feel like they want to tell their story. But I wonder if those same people might still appreciate having their name and their child's name mentioned on an episode and sponsoring an episode. So like, I'm not ready to share, but maybe I
Absolutely.
can have a episode sponsoring or something like that. So
yeah.
anyway.
I just have, this is to do more with sponsorship and the announcement of it, that we're going on a family trip to Greece, and my mother's family's from Greece, and we're taking a bus out to the village, and there's no restaurant. I mean, it's like a 3-hour drive through the mountains. There's no restaurant for all 45 of us to get off and eat at. So we're packing snacks that day. And my mother said, I want to sponsor the snacks. And I said, that's great. She said, whatever it costs, I want to pay for them. But then later she said, are you going to make are you going to have an announcement time so people know that I wanted to do that? So I need to generously, or verbally out loud share that my mom generously wants to donate the snacks for the ride. And people, when and I'm not thinking that she's self-focused in that, but she just wanted people to know, like, this is important to me that you're going to my home country and I care. So when I said, like, it really matters to people, it's not so much like, oh, I heard my name or, look at me, but it's more in, I believe in this, or in memory of my child. Like it has value to them. Right. And the interesting part in another statistic that I read about podcasts is 85% stay in the long term like yours because it is a topic of interest. Mm-hmm. Your listeners, why you've made it at 300 episodes and people still wanting to be on and tell their story. I mean, you have a lot of people that, want to do that, and people are listening because it's not going out of style. Pain does not just go away, and no matter where people are in their story, this is something people are hungry for. And again, I said it already, but when I am meeting a newly bereaved person and I can tell them that we did an episode called The Early Days, and if they want to get to that raw conversation that you shared about your early days, that's like they crave that. They need to know that. And they're like, there's someplace I can get that information. I get all excited about it because I love that.
Right. Because you do feel so lost and alone. And I mean, that's why way back, what was I thinking? I was thinking there's got to be a podcast. There's got to be something about child loss that I can turn to, someone that I can figure out what it is I'm supposed to be doing. Right. That's why, that's another reason why I think it was January, is because how with Starlight, because we joined Starlight almost right away.
Yeah.
Right? We were 3 weeks in, and we met with you right away. The first week after Andy died, we were in group within 3 weeks of Andy dying. But we do a session in the fall, or a couple sessions in the fall, when, right before Christmas. And then from Christmas until February, there isn't anything. Like, they have that month off. You can do some more educational sessions, things like that, but there's not support group. So that's another reason why I think it was then, because I was feeling pretty lost as to what to turn to, who to go to, things like that.
But I hear, and I hope you hear now, you're the person that is answering that question for all these other parents. Like, you were saying, I had nothing to turn to. You created the answer for all those other parents. And that's just so, and again, that it was a divine calling and you were obedient to that. Even when after that first episode, you could have said, yeah, you're right. It didn't record. Well, let's just not do that.
I think we're done.
And, yeah.
Well, and now I feel too, there are lots of podcasts now for bereaved parents, but I do still feel like I was kind of a pioneer. I mean, I'm kind of, certainly one of the early ones.
Yep. I agree. Were there, we kind of went into some of the pros that you were helping other people. So what are some of the awesome parts that it has brought to both of your lives?
I feel so privileged to be able to hear these stories and learn about these amazing kids. It is such a privilege. I just can't even emphasize that enough, how blessed I feel by learning a little bit about all of these amazing kids and these amazing parents and how they are getting up every day and keep going every day, even though they don't think they can.
You're right.
And they do. I mean, I can't think of a bigger blessing than that, really, truly. I have met some of my very closest friends through this podcast. I can't imagine what my life would be like today had I not started.
Yeah.
I don't know how you answered that question. How would you answer that?
I mean, it's certainly, I think for me, the thing that has been the most touching is just when occasionally you share some of the emails of people who were, I mean, I still remember early on someone who couldn't get out of bed for 6 months or something, had knitting, and they had been able to knit, and they listened to the show and they said, yeah, I realized that, getting out of the shower is a success. And so anyway, then she got to the point where she kind of got back to being able to do some things that she couldn't do before. I mean, it was, I mean, you get those emails all the time to the point where I don't think you even show them to me anymore.
No.
Because they're so like, yeah, there's another person who's like, changed your life. Oh, well. Right. No, I'm just
no, not
but
like
I mean,
that. But you're right. I mean, I've gotten 3 this week and I didn't tell you about any.
Yeah. No,
right. And they're beautiful stories. And I love that. I mean, a challenge now is the fact that I get a lot of people asking to be on, and I feel like I really want to have everybody on, and it's getting difficult to do that.
Yeah.
And part of that is, recently we're talking about, that being successful. And part of that is that, in 2025, FeedSpot ranked the top grief podcast. What did they do? The top 300 grief podcasts in the world or something. I mean, it was a crazy number. It was like a lot. And I remember thinking, should I scan through this list? I'm probably on it. I don't know, whatever. And then I was number 6 out of 300. I was like crazy. And, but because of that, then there are more book publishers. There are more of those type of situations, which sometimes are a huge blessing. Like, for example, that's how Faith's Lodge, I'm sure, got a hold of me. I just did one on Faith's Lodge. I have wanted to talk to someone from Faith's Lodge since the first months me doing the podcast, right? I heard about what an amazing organization that is. And now they're called the Child Loss Foundation. So I do have to say that.
Right.
They're no longer, I should say, the organization formerly Faith's Lodge, now Child Loss Foundation. But those being on lists like that has made that happen. I mean, I got to interview David Kessler. That's amazing. So those are blessings. But the downside to that is that, I have listeners wanting, and I had to recently send something out, send responses back saying, get in touch with me in a month or two and we'll see if we can get you on schedule. So, so that has been making me feel a little bit bad because I don't want to turn people down.
I know.
Ever.
That was hard for you because you called me over that one. Like, Gwen, what am I going to do? It's interesting because when you were talking about getting the editor and how long it took you to edit your perfectionism, I wrote down, I need to give her some professional mantras that say, my best is good enough. I cannot do it all. If they're always going to want more, there's always going to be more to do. Like sometimes just saying it's okay. And that's kind of what you've done by handing this over to the editor. Like, it's wonderful. It's working. It's good. But I also think that professional mantra we're not going to be able to say yes to everybody.
Yeah, I remember you saying that to me.
Yeah. And Jesus didn't heal everyone, right? He had
because I talked to you about it because I'm like, I don't know. We always do ours every 6 weeks. I don't know that I can do them every 6 weeks. Maybe we should push them back. And you were like, I think we still need to do them every 6 weeks. You just need to say no sometimes, Marcy. And like, yeah, you're right. Because I do think these episodes that you and I do are so incredibly helpful to people. I mean, my regular listeners long to hear episodes with you. They love you. I mean, it's like you're this big celebrity, you know,
Well,
I always get to hear from Gwen. So I didn't want to decrease that, but that felt like the only option for a while, you know, when I was feeling like I'm turning people down. And you know, I don't know.
Well, now that sounds self-serving. I was saying, don't take me off to let somebody else.
No, but I don't think it was the right thing. And Eric had said that too. Eric, you were very clear on that. Like, and from the very beginning, the very, very, very beginning, he said the episodes with Gwen are going to be the most important because that's when we like look at a topic and, you know, think about what is going on. So there's not as much storytelling, although there's a fair amount of kind of Andy storytelling. And I do think that people appreciate the episodes with you because those are the episodes where they learn a bit more about me.
Right. You. Yes, I agree. I agree.
So I think that's a good thing because otherwise, if I'm just a host and I don't say anything, it ends up not being I don't know. I feel like some people don't like that as well because they want to hear about me and they want to know about me.
Absolutely.
One other benefit too?
A few other things that I learned about podcasts that we just touched on is consistency is key. And you have been consistent and they know what to expect when you interview someone. They know what to expect when we talk. I mean, you know, they don't know what we're going to say, but they know what to expect. But your listeners have become loyal and they say, you know, listeners are loyal if you're consistent, your topic is of interest, and they almost become, they said, fans, like series fans. So it's not so much that people like think I'm a celebrity, but they become fans because of the consistency. They know what they're going to get in a conversation with the two of us. And I also believe that they become fans and encouragers and cheerleaders for the other moms too.
Yeah.
And I do believe that some of your people who are further down their grief road can listen to some of the newer stories and see that they're not in that place anymore. Like they can have that heart to say, oh, yes, I remember being there. Oh, I guess if I remember being there, I'm not there anymore. And it gives them, so it feeds for everyone.
And not just that, but sometimes when I'm talking to people and they, you know, are timidly like hate to admit, but they're not listening all the time anymore. You know, I don't always listen to all of them anymore. Like, that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. That means you might not need it as much right now. And if you're at a point in your grief journey where you feel like you don't need it every week, wonderful. Yeah. I mean, that's nothing to be upset about. You know, I think it certainly can be a show that you listen to for a season and it gets to the point in your grief where you maybe don't want to listen every Thursday anymore.
Well, when someone is in a support group and they say, I'm not going to sign up again, or I'm not going to come. They are that same timid, like, oh, I'm feeling bad, I'm letting you down. And I say, that's wonderful that you've gotten to that point. How depressing it would be for me if I had to make room for every single person in this room because nobody leaves. Like, that is the goal, so that they feel strong enough that they don't need it. So the fact that you're not keeping, and I'm going to say fans because we use that word, but I mean listeners, for your own personal need to feel like, oh, of course you have to listen, is like, no, if you are at that point, that's what we want.
That is what we want. I mean, we really want this to be hope and healing. Yeah. And healing and moving forward. And sometimes, obviously, I've got good friends who are going to continue to listen forever and ever, and that's great. But there are other people that just don't, that just listen for a season. And I've had people that listen for a season, and then they stop, and then they come back. And they tell me that too. And that's fine because maybe they're having a little harder time. There's, you know, something comes up and they want that support again. Because I do feel like people feel like they are almost a part of a kind of a club, a special group when they're in the group listening, right? I don't know how many people say they nod along, almost talking back to their phone as they're listening to the podcast because they feel like they are a part of something.
Mm-hmm. Eric, I feel like a while ago you were going to say something, but we were both talking so much.
I was just say one of the other benefits of the things of the show, I think, especially for Marcy, is that she's more confident talking about stuff. And I think, branching, we've talked to some medical groups recently over the last year or two, and that's been good. That's something I think we want to do a little bit more of. And that's a little bit that's outside of the show as far as the focus of the show, as far as, visiting with parents and talking about the story. But the medical community is really pretty lousy, as you know, dealing with death. Most people are. Yeah. It's not just medical, but they're obviously, dealing with it a lot more often. So that's an important thing. So I think, just the fact that you feel more comfortable doing that sort of thing. And I think that being more a part of this mission, I guess you'd say, of this focus of this Always Annie's Mom organization or whatever it is, not just the podcast, but that it's something more. I think that's been a nice thing too, that just we feel confident, comfortable enough to do that.
Well, and I think too of what you and I did, Gwen, and how we were, did that work for the state of Michigan to help them train people who are answering phone calls and might get phone calls on grief and bereavement and what they might be able to do and resources they can do, use and what to say and kind of what not to say. That was something I would have never done before doing the podcast, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And it's just given you both opportunities to take the pain that happened to you. And again, we talked about this. We wouldn't trade Andy's life for that, but make something and be able to help others in that. That was not your original plan, but it's become a byproduct that you're able to touch other people and your medical community and, both of you for your patients and the families that you serve in your job. I just know that it's touched many people.
Well, one other thing that I did want to talk about, and this kind of goes back to, we talked about how it's work and it's a grind. And recently I took off from really working on the podcast for almost a full month. I did not do anything with the podcast because we went on vacation. And we went to Italy and Greece, and I had the podcast all ready to go, and I just kind of had to publish, although some stuff sort of got screwed up a little bit. And again, I had to let it go. I produced an episode, and on my website, it's not numbered properly. So if you go to the website, andysmom.com, and you go to current episodes, it'll say 199, then I think then 198, then 195, then 197, 195, 196, 197. We're all done ahead of time. No one notices. Right? And Eric's like, no one cares. And I am on a train in Italy, and maybe it was when I was in Greece. I don't know. I'm freaking out trying to get this. And he goes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the most current episode is now listed as the second most current episode. It's not a big deal. And I did. I let it go. And but I think that was good for us. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about on that trip was us, I think, this is a huge trip, obviously. We were gone for 17 days or something. We left on the 9th. We came back on the 26th. We landed on the 10th. So 17 days. And I was very intentional about trying to have Andy be a part of that trip, even though obviously he couldn't be a part of that trip. So we brought his teddy bear Herky, and we took pictures at every single place we went. We took a family picture with Herky in it. And I remember when I first said, we're bringing Herky, you looked at me like, we're not bringing Herky, because you were worried we would lose Herky.
Yeah, that's my fear.
His fear was we would lose Herky. And
we lost 2 pairs of shorts, and
I lost a sock.
We
lost stuff. Peter brought 3 pairs of shorts and a pair of dress shorts. He came back with 1 pair of shorts because he lost 2 pairs of Anyway. We were getting a little fearful that he was going to be coming back in his underwear or something.
just kept losing
But
stuff.
Herky came along and I had him in my backpack.
Yes. So what we did
Oh.
is Eric had the backpack. Most of the time, Eric took the backpack. And Herky, we would just get to a place. We're at the Acropolis. We're at, St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Like, okay, let's do the Herky picture. And we take out Herky and we do the picture with Herky. And it felt really important to me to make him a part of it,
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up kind of for a couple reasons, but one of which to just encourage other people that it's okay to still, do things intentionally to keep your child with you. And
Absolutely.
It may seem silly, and I'm wondering, what did all the people think that, this family pulling out the bear and doing the picture with the bear all the time?
Mm-hmm.
But it was important to me. It was important because I kept thinking about how excited he would be,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
He would have loved that trip. Would have loved everything about that trip.
Especially eating the pizza all the time, yeah.
And the food. He would have loved the food.
The food, yeah, the pizza, yeah.
So the alternative would be to not travel because going without him seems, difficult, wrong, whatever.
Right.
And there are some people who do stop living. What you are showing the listener is that, you didn't go on a trip months after he died. This has been, planned.
And it's close to 7 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been on other trips, but
yes.
Just this one that just seems like he should be here. That you could, I love the word you used, intentionally made him a part of that. I love every part of it. And so I can't wait to see the pictures, and I hope, maybe you'll share some on the website too so people can see.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the plan, is to do that. Also, the newest addition to the podcast in the last, since last fall is Jen, our videographer who does these beautiful videos for all of the listeners, or not listeners, for all the guests who've been on. And so we do video clips. We've done video clips. Peter used to do them. But now that Jen does them, she puts all these pictures overlying it. A lot of times little videos over us talking. And I had a friend of mine on, Percy's mom, not too long ago. And she was so blessed. She was so happy to have those videos. And I said to her, I don't have any of Andy. And she said, Jen needs to do one of Andy. Mm-hmm. And so I asked her, because I know we're only recording this a week before it goes out, and I usually like to give her a lot more time than that. But I said, would it be okay if I had you do a video or two for Instagram with Andy in it? So she's going to do that. So if some beautiful. Of you that are listening now haven't been following on Instagram or Facebook, you need to do that now. So go to Always Andy's Mom and do that, because in the next few days, there'll be a couple of videos of Eric and Gwen and I talking here, and Andy in the background, or our pictures of Europe and Herky in the background, all of that. I know Jen will make it amazing and bless us with it. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a treasure. I think one other thing that it was for a different presentation that I was thinking about how none of us are meant to do this alone. And what everything, I've said this before, like the animal kingdom, the way God designed them, they help each other out. They, do things in community. And we as, the humankind don't do that as much. And I was reading about how much it takes for a Formula One car to be and do you know how many people it takes for a Formula One car to go around the track?
No.
1,200 people. And so many.
We went to a race when we were in Europe. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that you went to. I'm not.
We went to a Formula One race because that's Peter's dream, is to be on a Formula One team, because he's going to school for motorsports engineering and he loves Formula One. So we went to an actual Formula One race. So I'm like, Does she know this?
No.
I can't believe you used that as an example.
No, I follow some other people on Instagram who were there in Capri, was it?
So the last one was in Spain. We went to the one in Italy.
Okay.
We went to Imola.
And anyway, so no, I did not know that. But in this speech, I was saying, we have to be more like a Formula One car. Like, we need our team. And most of us try to drive around like a Ford Focus, that it's just us and we're just taking care of us and we only have, And what I love, if you have created a community here that is its own Formula One team of, you have more than 1,200 people who have listened, more lives, more stories. It is top notch. And I just wanted you to be aware that I love the community that you've built because you took the chance and did this. And I think, to wrap it all up, you are absolutely right. I feel this way about my place in what I do in my life and this podcast, that it is sacred and a holy, holy space. And it is a calling. Like, it is a calling. And so when people want to give credit to me, or I know you're very humble, and credit to you, I had someone say to me recently, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't met you. And it was all about me. And I said, what's so amazing to me is that God loved you so much that he said, you know what? I'm going to give you a Gwen who kind of knows a little bit about grief. And because I know you need that. And I started thinking and preparing for this conversation that people now and in the future, God's going to say somehow they need to find out about this podcast because they need it. And we're just the vehicles that are used for that. And that is a holy place. And I'm just thrilled that you are there for people who need it. Not you like, oh, Marcy Larson saves the day. This whole thing together. People need it. And it's going to be there. And there are so many people right now that are going to be listening to this episode at this point, and they're going to be messaging you or clapping as they're listening, going, yes, it was there when I needed it.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being a great host today.
Well, you guys make it easy. I mean, I didn't do much, but I just loved being just a privilege to be a part of all of it. And I still started with this, and I cannot believe we're at 300 episodes.
Yeah. Nope, I can't.
Just can't. Mm-hmm. Yep. Amazing.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.